Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be painting up a big mech with Shokk attack gun from this Kildaka box set that I got for myself for Christmas, and it's 5 months later. Anyway, so I went to for priming for assembly. The gun is entirely assembled except for the front the fidget spinner piece. The body is fully assembled except for the grot is attached to the hose, so that's separate, so it's basically in 4 separate pieces, and this is for ease of painting. Any of these things attached together would be an issue, and of course I primed with Bright Touch General Purpose Car Primer. Alright, and for pre-coating, we're going to use Corvus Black, Pallid Witch Flesh, and White Scar. However, I'm going to say that this was a mistake. So I started off with Corvus Black, airbrush the bottom half, and then I went with Pallid Witch Flesh, airbrushing from the top to add light and dark values, and then I dry brushed all over with White Scar White. However, the Corvus Black was too dark, and this really caused a problem with the underside for some of the orc skin. It got too dark. Probably a dark gray or just a gray would have been a better undercoat. It did cause some trouble, and I had to add a few extra coats of paint to the skin and such. Alright, now with Orc Flesh in a 1-to-1-ish mix with Lamian Medium, it depends. It takes some tries to get used to get the mix right, and then add a little bit of water for it to flow better. I then applied this all over the skin, including the grot. And in some cases I had to do a second coat in some areas. You don't want to do it in all, but in some. This is a sort of a skill to get right. And now for a wash. So with Viridian Hue, added with mineral spirits until it becomes a wash, I apply it to the body of the grot and all the flesh of the orc mech. And then once it dries, usually with the help of a hairdryer to rapidly dry off the mineral spirits so the paint is there, I then wipe away with a sponge. The sponge may look dirty, but the part that's touching it is clean. That's what scissors are for. Just keep removing sponge until you get a clean spot. And then I applied it again all over, and then I would wipe it again selectively, much lighter in certain areas, but mostly focusing on the faces of each model. Alright, now, I'm going to practice something. So, normally the skin would be good and I'd be done, but I have a potential for a commission coming up that I'm going to have to expand my painting a little bit, so I'm going to go even further beyond. So I'm going to take some Orc Flesh and mix it with a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh to make it lighter, and some water to help it flow better, and I'm going to apply this on select areas on the skin to create a higher highlight, essentially. And then I will do a second final coat, very fine on the most tips and raised areas with more Pallid Witch Flesh mixed in for a much lighter stuff. I show the first coat with the orc and then the second coat with the grot, which I think was a bad comparison because you never saw the grot with the extra highlights. But basically, the very most pointed tips will have the extra Pallid Witch Flesh mix in, and this creates more detail, more brightness to the model. Alright, and with magenta, with a little bit of mineral spirits to turn into a paint, not a wash, we're going to apply this to the inside of the orc's mouth, as well as his bottom lip thing. And so then I wipe it away with a sponge. The front part of the tongue gets wiped, and it looks like a good color transition. However, the lip didn't go so well, so I kind of did a few of them. I did some as a wash, didn't work, wiped, it didn't work. applied a pure paint afterwards and then wiped afterwards, and you don't see the actual final product. I forgot to get that, but I applied just a pure paint on and then do a few dabs with a sponge to get the front part more brighter. Alright then, moving on. With Steel Legion Drab, Agrax Earthshade, Baneblade Brown, and Screaming Skull, we're going to paint his teeth. So we're going to start off with a layer of Steel Legion Drab all around his teeth. The big tusks on the bottom take the longest. And then after that, we're going to apply Agrax Earthshade to add extra darkness into the depths right there. And then once that is done, we're going to apply another layer of Steel Legion Drab, basically covering 90 to 95% of each teeth, as best we can. The top teeth are pretty small. And then we're going to do Baneblade Brown and apply it to around 80 to 90% of each of the teeth. And then with Screaming Skull, we're going to paint it on the very tips of the teeth, for the top and the bottom, the center part of the top, and the tips of the bottom tusk teeth. And now with Corvus Black, we're just going to be painting the nails of the Gretchen and the Ork. Simple. Alright, now with Steel Legion Drab and Baneblade Brown and Lamian Medium, we're going to paint leather and cloth. So a Steel Legion Drab mixed with Lamian Medium into our usual wash mix, and with a little bit of water to make it flow better, we apply this to the hose that the goblin's being sucked into, or the Gretchen, and his loincloth. I'm assuming he can't get good quality cloth, so he has the darker color. And don't forget that the Ork gun has a little bit of the leather hose on it as well, so I missed that the first time as well. And we're going to do around 2 coats of this. Well, it depends on how thick we make it, so this isn't an exact science. The wash sometimes is stronger or thicker depending on how much paint we move in. It's not exact. And then with Baneblade Brown, we're going to apply, in my case, 2 coats of this onto his pants. A first coat, and then when it dries, with the help of a hairdryer, a slightly more diluted second coat. Alright, and then with Burnt Umber and Mineral Spirits, we're going to add the depth. So first for the hose that's on them and the Gretchen loincloth, we're going to create not a paint, something between a paint and a wash, more of a sludge, thicker, and we're going to apply it on there, dry it out with a hairdryer, and then wipe it. And then that creates a pretty decent appearance. And then we're going to do a wash, a bit of a thin wash onto his pants and shirt. And then we're going to wipe and then apply a second coat, and then I do a little bit more of a wipe on the more raised areas. And then finally, I think I maybe do one more coat because it was a little too thin, and so there wasn't that much depth added. So, and then I also added one very thin coat onto the hose as well, again, just cause. And now back to Corvus Black. With this, I'm going to paint all the stitches on the pants and the hose. The reason is because I figure that it'll make it more visible if it's just black lines, so. Alright, now for some metals. With Gloss Varnish, Acrylic Ink, and Runefang Steel Air, we're going to make a wash. And basically a bunch of Runefang Steel Air, a couple drops of the Gloss Varnish, and Carbon Black. So what we're going to do is, actually I'm going to make the wrong move, so I'm going to start off with the darkest metal first. I added a lot more Carbon Black, which by a lot more I mean half a drop. This thing is very strong. And then create a very dark black metal. And I apply it a bunch of places all throughout the model. I show it a little bit here. Oh, and don't forget to add water to make it flow better. That's what gets the highlights really out. And then I do the same thing again, but with a new mix with very, very little of the Carbon Black to make a more silverish, brighter steel, and apply it all throughout. The silver should have gone first because I'm somewhat following the box, and the dark metal parts are on the outer, and the silver's on the inner, so I should have done the inner first, then the outer. And then with Transparent Burnt Sienna, we're going to apply this to the mix we've already created with the Bright Silver, and I'm going to apply it to certain areas to create this brass metal, here and there. Alright, I'm not liking the metals too much. I don't know, they look a little dull for me, or at least this camera makes them look better. So I'm going to add a wash of black and burnt umber. Well, black and a little bit of burnt umber add in makes it look better, and then I'm going to apply this all over the metals. And then once it dries with the help of a hairdryer, I'm going to wipe it down with a sponge to add some highlight to it. Alright, with Agrax Earthshade, Mephiston Red, Evil Sun Scarlet, and Troll Slayer Orange, we're going to paint eyes and lenses. So with Agrax Earthshade first, I don't show it, but I apply a little bit to the eyes of the Gretchen just to set the base color, as well as the lenses. Then I apply Mephiston Red all over the lenses and their eyes and the fist thingy that's on his left arm. And then I apply Agrax Earthshade onto the fist after it dries with red. Now once that is done, I apply Mephiston Red again onto the red fist, but focusing on the jagged edges of the lines of the metal of the fist and a little bit into the main body. Then with Evil Sun Scarlet, for the eyes, I apply a dot covering like 80 to 90% of the eye, essentially. And the same with the lenses, and with his right lens that has like an X on it, I applied it to like 70 to 80% of the center, as best I can. And as far as the fist thing, I apply it to all the lines, the jagged lines on his fist, a little bit of a thick line. And then with Troll Slayer Orange, I apply tiny dots onto the center of the Gretchen eyes. I apply tiny dot to, as best as I can, the upper center of his left eye, the tiny one. And then the big eye with the X, I apply a dot as best I can in the center. The little water to make it smooth out better. And as far as the fist, I apply thin lines on the more raised edges. It takes a bit to figure it out, right? And now with Ulthuan Grey and Pallid Witch Flesh, we're going to paint the belt buckle he has and the little teeth on his left fist thingy. Now in my haste, I already applied Ulthuan Grey before I recorded it, but with Pallid Witch Flesh, I applied to the most upper areas just to add light. Ulthuan Grey is good as a base color. Alright, now with XV88 and Mournfang Brown, we're going to paint leather straps and belt buckles and stuff like that. So with Mournfang Brown, we're applying it all over his suspenders, belt, and his left glove. And so I then applied Agrax Earthshade after the fact to add some more depth, and then I went back with Mournfang Brown and applied a layer. Make sure you have water to make it smooth in, and applied it. It added a little bit of highlights. I didn't show that part. And then I did a mix of Mournfang Brown with XV88, close to 1-to-1, but not exactly, and then I applied it onto the edges of all the leather straps and stuff. Now when you water it down, and when you're doing this edging highlight, you can actually apply probably around 2 layers. The first layer blends in pretty well, but is still a little bit noticeable, but a second layer of the exact same paint over once it's dried makes the highlight more prominent. Alright, with Averland Sunset and Corvus Black, we're going to paint the power cords that are all around. So we're going to start off with Averland Sunset, because we want the brighter color first, because we're not going to be able to apply Corvus and then Averland afterwards. And then I'm going to apply Corvus Black entirely on some. There's some of these small cords. There's 2 big ones, the one connected to his left fist and the one right under the front of his gun we're going to apply with Averland. And then once the Corvus Black one is done, we're then going to go and paint strips, not stripe that coils around it all. I can't coordinate that well enough, so just some simple strips, and the Corvus black covers well enough. It's not a pure black, it's an off black, and it'll do well enough. And then with Hoeth Blue and Warpstone Glow, we're going to apply it to the two other chords that are next to his chest. On his chest there's this band and stuff. And so one, we're going to paint Hoeth Blue, which is really two chords right next to each other. And then the one all the way on the side, we're going to paint with Warpstone Glow. And now with Hoeth Blue, Calidor Sky, and Lamian Medium, we're going to paint these electrical glowy thingies. So basically we start with Hoeth Blue and we paint the lightning around. Then we're going to take like a couple drops of Lamian Medium and just a little bit, like the tip of your brush with Calidor Sky. We want to make a very thin wash thing and a little bit of water. And so what we're going to do is we're going to apply this, we're going to paint the metal balls and the lightning. Don't forget there's one of these like on the left hand where the goblin is being sucked in. And so basically what we're doing is we're doing these very thin coatings, and it's going to change and shade the metal blue. I do around 3 of these in total and on the lightning, and then once I do all over, I then start doing a couple shades in like halfway on the metal ball towards the lightning, and then I keep doing like more shades, but getting closer and closer just to the lightning. And so the metal will go from a dark bluish metal to a very dark bluish metal like the lightning, and it's, well, also on the lightning. However, this has, it's not bright enough. The lightning is not bright enough, so I went back with Hoeth Blue and I applied like some edge highlights onto more prominent raised areas of the lightning. After that was done, I then got a little bit of Ulthuan Grey and mixed it in with the Hoeth Blue and applied it to the most raised corner things of the lightning. Alright, now with Liquitex Gloss Varnish and AK Interactive Ultramatte Varnish, we're going to, well, varnish the model. Now, I start off with Liquitex Gloss Varnish onto some eyes, not really his lenses because I like the way the lenses were, and like the cords, power cords, and stuff like that to add some shine into them. However, I realized this was a mistake because I should have done the Ultramatte first, because then I had to cautiously paint around the gloss to not ruin it. And so with AK Interactive Ultramatte Varnish, I applied it to all the skin, leather, non-metal, and the left red metal fist of the thing. I just liked it to be varnished like that. The metal, I don't need to varnish because it already has varnish mixed in, so it makes it pretty durable. I then assembled the model in its entirety. Now, the reason I did this here is because I haven't done the base yet, and that's because that little Gretchen has like a thing to go with the base. And so I needed to get the exact measurements of it for how I wanted to do the base. In order to do that, I needed it to be fully assembled, but I couldn't assemble it for painting. So I had to wait till the very end, when it's fully assembled, to do the base part. And so with Liquitex modeling putty, I then applied this onto a base. I already did that, and I rapidly dried it, and I just apply the guy's feet and stuff into it after gluing the model together and to create the imprint, and then I let it dry overnight. It's just the way things happen. So this took a whole extra day just to have the model or the base dry. A day has passed, and now the base is solid and dry. And so with Elmer's gel glue, I like that, and with some sand, I then paint on the glue as best I can to make sure it won't get in the way of the model attaching, and then I apply sand all over, and then that dries in a little bit. Easy. And with Liquitex Matte Varnish, I apply this onto the sand once the glue has dried and stuff to seal it in. And then with Mournfang Brown, Agrax Earthshade, XV88, we're going to paint the base. So with Mournfang Brown as a base, then rapidly dry it. Then we're going to apply Agrax Earthshade on top, dry it. And then with a dry brush of XV88, we're going to apply this all on top and create some nice dirty sand. And don't forget, the Goblin is also, or Gretchen is also pulling in some dirt, so you have to do the same to that base. And then I super glue it onto the model. And done. And yeah, actually this was a really fun kit. It was nice and relaxing to do. I really enjoyed it. I like doing orc skin for some reason. It's nice. And so overall, it's a nice model kit. It was pretty simple to do. The painting was very straightforward. As far as a rating goes, it could be a 9 out of 10, but I feel like the metal is lackluster. I don't know what it is, but like for some reason the process of using this liquid metal stuff isn't as good. But I mean, it shows all the details and the lines and stuff, so all the highlighting and stuff is all done. But I feel like there's something missing or lackluster. But so I'll give it a solid 8. But I do love the skin, I do love the face, I love all the details. The colors are great. It looks awesome. I was very tired of 3D printing bases because, like, I don't know what it is, but for every base that gets printed, there's like 3 or 4 failures. So I was like, screw it, I didn't want to have to deal with 3D printing a base for this, and so I went with a basic old mud base that I used to do. But overall, I would say it's a definitely solid 8 out of 10. A lot of things were good. This was good practice. The highlights further beyond really turned out well. The colors are great. A lot of the details are popping all over. Very simple, very easy to do. Yeah, this is just a wonderful model kit, and it was a fun project to do. And yeah, a solid 8 out of 10. I don't know what could push it. I just feel like the medals are just not entirely there yet. Haven't figured that out how yet, despite how incredibly detailed all this stuff is. So, like the video if you like the video, share it if you want to share it, comment if you comment, and more to come, hopefully soon. Bye.